All right, everyone. It is about, I think it's right at 10 o'clock. I hope everybody can hear me. Welcome. I'm going to go ahead and let's see. I'm trying to let a couple more people in. All right, folks are steadily coming in, which is great. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. It's so good to see you all. Welcome to our virtual Coffee with a Curator program. Many of you have been here before, you come every week, but we've got some newcomers, so welcome. We're so happy to have you. And this is a very safe space. It's a fun, informal program, and we are just in for a treat today. Our representatives from Black Coffee Atlanta, thank you so much for being here and for sponsoring our giveaway. And then Gabrielle Dudley, our wonderful guest speaker. We're so excited to hear from you in about 30 minutes. Okay, so I just wanted to let everyone know this meeting will be recorded. That way people who couldn't attend can view it. I know some folks wanted to make it but couldn't, and we're really looking forward to seeing this. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it, and we do this every week. So if you like what you see today and you think you might want to at least get the emails to join every week, please, at the end of the program, just send an email to me or to rarebooks@kennesaw.edu, and we'll make sure that you are aware of each theme for the week. All right, so we are going to get started. So every week we have a tradition where we try to figure out where Andrew Bramlett is. Okay, Andrew, can you raise your hand? Or, okay, you just did a thumbs up. Okay, that's Andrew. So every week, Andrew changes his background to a place or a book-related place that has something to do with the theme. Sometimes he is nice and gives us hints. Sometimes he doesn't let us have that many hints. Andrew, do you want to say anything about where you are? You want to just give us any hints that you think are appropriate?
Well, I have to give my dad a bit of credit for coming up with this one. It is connected to The Color Purple, the movie in particular.
Okay, so connected to the movie. All right. Do we, okay. It looks like, I mean, it looks definitely like a public library.
Mm-hmm. I think this is the children's section.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Okay. So I'm gonna guess that this is in the South.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have want to throw anything out? I'm gonna go out on a limb. Is it somewhere in Georgia?
No.
No. Okay, not Georgia.
That's pretty close, but not Georgia.
Alabama, Florida. No.
I am fervently searching on Google to try to back you up, Joellen.
I know. Help me out here, somebody.
I don't know anything. No, I don't know.
Huh. I'm trying to think. It has to do with a movie. Like the production of the movie?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, man. Any other hints you can give us?
I'm seeing in the chat, no part of the movie was filmed in this library, and it's not in Brooklyn.
Okay. And Kelly, you think that The Color Purple was filmed in North Carolina?
It was filmed in North Carolina, and that is the correct state.
Yay. We're making progress. Thank you, Kelly. Okay. Okay, public libraries in North Carolina that relate to the production of the movie The Color Purple. I don't know. Andrew usually stumps us. Sometimes we get it, but usually he stumps us. Last call for guesses. Okay, we don't know, Andrew. You stumped us this week. You win.
This is the Lewis Morgan Edwards Memorial Library in Marshville, North Carolina. Marshville has about 2,500 people as of the last census, so it could have grown slightly to 2,501 since then. The parts of the movie were filmed in the city.
Oh, I did not know that. That's so cool. Thank you so much. All right. And I'm really glad that you chose a place that, oh, perfect. Andrew he very graciously makes a handout for us every week about the location he chooses. So you can find that in the chat. Feel free to download it. You know, I'm really glad, Andrew, that you brought up a place that has to do with the movie, because in this particular case, I feel like the movie is almost just as important as the book, because I think a lot of people's introduction to The Color Purple might have been the movie as opposed to the book. I'm not trying to speak for everybody, but I know a lot of folks who saw the movie before they read the book. So anyway, all right. Well, thanks so much, Andrew. So today I'm just going to start off with just telling everybody I think this is going to be a really, really exciting program. And I'd like to know, though, first, has anyone, all of you who have either read the book, The Color Purple, or seen the movie, can you raise your hand, or both? Okay, so quite a few people are familiar. As you may know, The Color Purple is probably one of the, I would think, the most well-known work of Alice Walker. Alice Walker is a writer, poet, and an activist whose published works include 7 novels, 4 collections of short stories, 4 children's books, and just numerous volumes of essays and poetry. She was born in Eatonton, Georgia in 1944. She attended Spelman College and Sarah Lawrence College, and she graduated from Sarah Lawrence. She was the first Black woman to win the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award for The Color Purple. And she was largely responsible for really reviving the work and legacy of Zora Neale Hurston. And I know we have some Hurston lovers in this group as well. So what we're going to do is, again, we're not going to necessarily be able to go through all of the content of The Color Purple, because I don't want to do that too much, because some people may not have read it yet, or may not know everything that goes on. But there are so many different themes that occur in this book that are critically important, that were controversial at one time, and maybe still are. I'd like to show my copy of The Color Purple that I got. This isn't a particularly valuable copy, but I got it from a used bookstore many years ago, and it just kind of it sits on my bookshelf. I've already read it, but I've started reading it again in preparation for this program, and now I've decided I need to read it probably at least every 5 years, because I'm like, I was a completely different person when I read it before, and I feel like I never read it now, because it's just such a different experience. So that's something that I'm going to do. I don't know if anybody else does that with their books. But there are so many themes in this book: relationships among women, including lesbian relationships, feminism, racism, sexism, patriarchy, domestic, sexual, verbal abuse, experiences of Black women in the early 20th century, Southern roots and language, love, ancestors, violence, voice, finding voice, identity, redemption and reunion, motherhood, and what that looks like in many different ways. It's just amazing. So before I kind of get into the summary, just for folks who haven't or aren't as familiar, I'd love for you all, if the first time you read The Color Purple or saw the movie, what were your first impressions? What did you think? What was it like for you? So feel free to add your thought into the chat, or just unmute yourself. Tamara says it was very moving. I definitely agree. Absolutely. Stephanie says the bond between sisters was her favorite part. And Stephanie, you have only sisters, right? So yeah, I imagine that would be really resonate. Absolutely. Anybody, let's see. Okay. Tanisha, am I saying that right? Um, hopefully I'm not saying it incorrectly. Empowering, overcoming. Absolutely. Maureen says was struck by violence yet resilience. Absolutely. So it seems like a lot of us. Kelly says one of the first films. Let's see, that made her. Let's see, let me get this. One of the first ones made me think like an adult. I like that. Tamika says that for some reason you saw it as a kid, didn't really know what to think. I actually, I understand that. But as an adult, I understand the themes mentioned. Yeah, Gabrielle, same. Definitely too young to understand everything. Read the book as a teenager, but reading as an adult is much better. I agree. Same experience. Star says, although I've read the book as well, I plan on reading it because I've heard that it was better. Absolutely. Oh, and Maureen, glad you brought up the live theater. I heard there's a movie coming out of like the musical or the live play in 2023. I think that they're doing a movie of the musical or of the theater. Adina enjoyed Walker's vibrant writing style. Absolutely. So it sounds like everyone has really had some very meaningful experiences reading and watching The Color Purple. Yes, Tamika, The Color Purple is part of pop culture so much. I don't know about y'all, but when The Color Purple comes on TV, I'm like, oh, I've already seen it. And I'm like, let me just see where they are in it. And then there goes the whole afternoon because it's long and it's like, let me just see which part they're at. And then there goes the afternoon. So yes, it's very much part of pop culture. So just a brief summary for those who are not as familiar. So for one, The Color Purple is an epistolary novel. And I don't know why, I think I kind of missed that before when I noticed it, but didn't maybe have words to describe this. So it's a novel written as a series of letters over roughly 30 years. Mainly the letters are from the protagonist, Celie, to God, but there are also some later to her sister, Nettie. The Color Purple is a critical piece of American literature because it gives voice to the experiences of Black women in the rural South during the early 20th century and really celebrates, I think, the unmatched strength of women. That's just my personal opinion. The main character is Celie, and we meet her in a very kind of jarring way. She's a Black teenager who is repeatedly raped and impregnated by who she thinks is her father, but her stepfather, and forced to marry a man named Albert, who she calls Mr. for the majority of the novel. And after she's separated from the one person she loves, which is her sister Nettie, the girls vow to stay in touch through letters, but Nettie never appears to write her back. But later on, we figure out that situation. So Celie is stuck, struggling to raise Albert's children, and of course, while enduring his endless physical and verbal abuse. But she falls in love with Albert's lover, Shug Avery, who's a bold and unrestrained woman who encourages Celie's personal and sexual liberation. And through Celie's eyes, we see the impact of patriarchy, racism, sexism, and we also see that through the lives of Harpo, Celie's stepson, and his intrepid wife, Sophia, who becomes like a sister to Celie. And in the final kind of third of the novel, we see Celie learning to fight for herself. We see the power of redemption, reunion, and love among women and their families. So I don't know if you all know this, but The Color Purple was actually inspired a lot by Alice Walker's own family. So I'm going to try to get this right. But I believe Alice Walker's step-grandmother, Rachel, was married to Walker's grandfather as a teenager after her biological grandmother was murdered by her mother in front of Alice's father. I think that's how that went. So very traumatic situation. And I think Alice Walker wanted to kind of capture this experience, give voice to her grandmother Rachel, who didn't have as much of a voice in her own life. And she did this, as you all may notice, if you read the book, using a lot of vernacular, which again, some people criticized, but I really enjoy it. And I think that it was unique. She wanted I think she wanted her characters to sound like her family. So does anyone I have a couple quotes that are famous that we can read and talk about from the novel, but does anyone have any memorable passages, even if you don't remember word for word, any memorable passages or lines from the movie or book that stuck with you or that you really resonated with? Some have been used over and over in pop culture and other movies. There's one, and feel free again if you want to put it in the chat, feel free to do that. There's one I kind of found, I think I see, oh, Tamika has one. Oh, yes. Until you do right by me, everything you do will crumble. Paraphrasing, but when Celie puts the curse on Albert, yes, absolutely. It's hard to forget that one. And I think also in the movie, Whoopi Goldberg just does that with such conviction that it's like it's hard to forget that one. Absolutely. There's one I think that I really love. It's on, let's see. So in my copy, it's on page 25. It's still toward the very beginning of the novel, but when Nettie, so Celie is already married to Mr. Or Albert, and so she's struggling, living with him, and the Mr.'s children just run all over her. They don't listen to her. And Nettie is like telling her, you need to show them, she said, who got the upper hand. And then Celie replies, they got it. I say, kind of relinquishing the fact that I do not have power in this household. But Nettie says, or then Nettie says to Celie, you got to fight. You got to fight. But I don't know how to fight. All I know how to do is stay alive. And that's kind of I think that really summarizes Celie's viewpoint, at least in the first parts of the novel. We see that change later. But in the first parts, that's really what she is trying to do, is stay alive. That's all she knows how to do. Oh, and Adina, I wrote to you but I love the description of the pants that Celie made. Adina, I'm sorry, can you just tell us a little bit about what you love about that? I'd love to hear.
I could picture them all, and it was such a really interesting way of showing not just the characters, but specifically how Celie saw them. And you're talking about kind of these parts and sort of Celie's growth as a character. And this, for me, I mean, it just came through so clearly in this sense of not only was she liberated essentially to be able to do this, but she could share that with all of these other people who meant something to her. And that was just a really special way of communicating that I hadn't really seen in a lot of other writing, a lot of other works that I've seen. So
absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so glad that you picked up on that. And I think you're right. Celie, of course, finding herself around on that point, because sometimes it's, as you read through, you're like, oh my gosh, is anything ever going to change for her? Who is she going to become? And so you just kind of start to see that there. So that's absolutely wonderful. I think just too, there's another quote that I think I've seen it used in other situations, like in other movies. It's become kind of famous, but again, toward the beginning of, relatively the beginning of the book, Sophia, who isn't afraid of anything, and who, of course, is limited and is by, her status as an African American woman during this time, and society tries to break her, but her spirit itself is strong from the beginning. And Celie, or she's talking to Celie after Harpo, Sophia's husband, tried to beat her, and it didn't go well for Harpo. And Sophia says, and again, you probably have heard this before, maybe other movies. All my life, I had to fight. I had to fight my daddy. I had to fight my brothers. I had to fight my cousins and my uncles. A girl ain't safe in a family of men. But I never thought I'd have to fight in my own house. She let out her breath. I loves Harpo, she say. God knows I do, but I'll kill him dead before I let him beat me. And so I think that one, again, I've heard, which is a perspective that I know that Celie wished maybe she could have, but at that point didn't yet. So I think that one was really, I've seen that repeated quite a bit. And the last one that I had picked out, just because it has to do with the title, you may have heard this before, when Shug Avery is talking to Celie and says, I think it pisses God off if you walk by the color purple in a field somewhere and don't notice it. And so I think that's another thing, another theme is religion, is really kind of changing views of religion and changing views of spirituality, and what that means and what it looks like, and freedom. So anyway, just so many quotable passages from this book that I thought were wonderful. We have a book in our collection. I'm gonna, right over here, I have it. Has anyone heard of Alice Walker's In Search of Our Mother's Gardens? I know Gabrielle has. And yes, Tamika, I agree. Oprah did a wonderful job as Sophia. That was wow. So in this is a book of essays and prose that Alice Walker published in 1983 with Harcourt Brace Jovanovich. And we've got a first edition here with the dust jacket. And it's so funny because The Color Purple had come out in 1982. And so we put ourselves in 1982. As you can imagine, for those of you who have seen the movie and read the book, you probably have picked up on there are some very heavy themes. And there were some themes that were quite controversial for the time. So there was a lot going on, but it was also being widely acclaimed as well. And I noticed on the back of the dust jacket, it talks about, people are giving praise for The Color Purple, an American novel of permanent importance, superb, a work to stand beside literature of any time and place. And, they also have a quote, which I think is interesting, from a representative from Essence magazine. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think Essence had a very good view of The Color Purple initially. I could be wrong on that. I was listening to a podcast, I think I heard that. So I think that's pretty important. But anyway, one of the essays that if we're able to get your hands on this, or if you want to come to our collections and view this text, there's an essay in the back, and it is called Writing The Color Purple. And Alice Walker talks about her process of writing The Color Purple. And one thing that I did not know is that writing this novel for Alice Walker forced her to move like 2 or 3 times because her characters didn't like it in New York. Then she said she moved to San Francisco. And I really hate paraphrasing Alice Walker, but I don't want to read the whole thing to you. But she said, I'll just read a couple. I can't help myself. She said, New York, whose people I love for their grace under almost continual, unpredictable adversity, was a place that the people in The Color Purple refused to even visit. The moment any of them started to form on the subway, a dark street, and especially in the shadow of very tall buildings, they would start to complain. So they didn't want to live there. So then she moved to San Francisco. And then her character said, "It's pretty," they muttered, "but us ain't lost nothing in no place that has earthquakes." So they didn't like it there. And then she said they also didn't like seeing buses, cars, or other people whenever they attempted to look out. "Us don't want to be seeing none of this," they said. "It make us can't think." So they didn't like it in San Francisco. So finally, they liked it in Northern California. So she settled there. But then they made her quit her job, and her Guggenheim Fellowship was running out. And then they made her take a year of silence, so she couldn't accept any commitments, any speaking engagements. And of course, I mean, for some, this terrified her because this was her living. And anyway, so it's a fascinating piece, just about how, I had never could have imagined that she had to move all over the place, quit everything, tell everybody I can't talk right now. But then they started to speak to her, and I think especially in the presence of her daughter, they spoke, which I think is beautiful. The last thing I want to mention before I hand it over to the illustrious Gabrielle Dudley, I'd like you all to know that we've, been speaking very, highly of this book. I think many of us like it, but a lot of people didn't at first. There was a lot of criticism for it. For one, this book has repeatedly been on the banned books list. I think it still is sometimes. It was criticized for its content about lesbian relationships, because remember, this is 1982 when it was first published, so that wasn't as normalized. So for that, negative portrayals of Black men. It was, so a lot of it was maybe some Black people felt uncomfortable with that or didn't like that, or stereotypical portrayals of Black people. Some people didn't appreciate that, didn't like the vernacular, things like that. And so I think that so I just want to make everybody aware that there were definitely some backlash that she experienced. And also I think after the film came out as well, some folks were very critical of that. I think also some people didn't like the way that Albert and Harpo were portrayed in the film. And so anyway, and I think that the musical or the theatrical performance tried to kind of change that a bit. So there's been a lot going on. So one thing I'm going to do, a book has just recently come out, I think earlier this year, and it's by, I feel like I'm going to say her name wrong. I think maybe Salamisha Tillet. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly, but it is called In Search of the Color Purple. And so she actually kind of talks about what we've been discussing here, kind of less about maybe like the book, the content of the book, and more about its development. Also, there are interviews in there with cast from the movie. I think I know at least, I think also with Danny Glover, Oprah Winfrey. I know she talks to Alice Walker. So I will put a link to that in the chat just so you can find it. Because I don't have it yet. I really want to get it. So I think that would be a great book to read in addition to my rereading The Color Purple itself. But does anyone have any last comments or anything that they want to share about The Color Purple or about their experience before we talk to Gabrielle? All right. Well, if you have anything, feel free to put it in the chat. Feel free to, or we can talk about it at the end. But I will first introduce Gabrielle Dudley, and then she'll be sharing her screen for us. Gabrielle M. Dudley is Instruction Archivist at the Stuart A. Rose Manuscript Archives and Rare Book Library at Emory University. Recently, she curated an exhibit titled She Gathers Me, Networks Among Black Women Writers, which using archival collections to uncover the intimate, personal, and professional relationships of Black women writers from the 1970s to today. Additionally, the exhibition has expanded to a multi-institution archives research and digital humanities project to further map networks among Black women writers. Gabrielle earned her MA in Public History and MLIS from the University of South Carolina. She also holds a BA in history from the University of Montevallo. All right. Well, thank you so much, Gabrielle, for joining us. And I think you should have screen sharing privileges.
Thank you so much, Joelle, and good morning, everyone. Joelle, and this is such an innovative program, and I'm just like, I've learned a lot, and it's just been really nice to be here with you. It's always a joy to be with you, Joelle.
Thank you.
And especially on a topic that I love so much. And I was trying to be respectful of like everyone else here, but everything that you said, I just wanted to scream and say how much I just love this book. It's one of my my top 5 books. I read it probably once a year, and I've never seen the movie. So
wow.
It just feels like it'll take something away from the book, even though I know that people say great things about the movie. So good morning again, everyone. I work at as Joellen has mentioned, the Rose Library at Emory University, and we have the honor of being the repository for Alice Walker's personal papers. So we acquired the collection in 2007 under both our African American history and culture collections, and then also our literary collections collecting areas. The collection was processed just 2 years later in 2009. And we have born digital material. So we have some of Alice Walker's personal computers, floppy disks, that sort of thing. And those were processed in 2014 and 2018. The collection includes some correspondence. So as Joellen has mentioned, that people were upset about the book and also the movie. So we have that correspondence and what we sort of consider a hate mail from a lot of people, but just as many people that responded and said they did not like the book. We have overwhelming correspondence from people that really, really enjoyed the book. We have Alice Walker's writings. So for all of her novels, In Search of Our Mother's Garden, some of her more memoir type pieces, subject files. So writers do lots of research when they're writing novels and writing books or working on a project. So we have we have hundreds of actually research files from Alice Walker. We have scrapbooks, one beginning when she was a 14-year-old girl and just writing poetry in Eatonton, Georgia. And some photographs, journals. There is a forthcoming book by a scholar, Valerie Boyd, that traces 40 years of Alice Walker's journal writing. So I think that will be out in the next year or so. And then also we have a finding aid available. So if anything about this presentation or the Walker papers interest you, you can always go back to this link to access the collection materials. So right now, unfortunately, Emory is only accepting visitors on a very limited basis, but hopefully in the fall, we will be able to be back open in our normal business hours. So if you're in the Atlanta area and want to come and look at the collection, you can. So one of the things that I wanted to show was the manuscript draft of The Color Purple. So when I started working at Emory, there were not many things, you kind of are just like, oh, okay. You get sort of used to, oh, here's a letter, here's a journal, here's this famous person that's touched this. But this was one of the times that I was like, whoa, oh my gosh, I can't believe, can I touch this? And I sort of became more of a visitor than an archivist when I saw this. So this is actually the cover of the manuscript draft of The Color Purple. People always ask about whether she typed it out, but she actually handwrote the entire manuscript for The Color Purple, and then it was eventually typed. So she has this image here on the front. Students always, so I work a lot with students at Emory, and students always ask, what does this mean? I know that Alice Walker had sort of a space that she would go and do writing retreats, that sort of thing. But I don't know where this image is from. She's alive. I should ask her the next time that she's at campus so that I can tell everyone. And this is, as Joellen mentioned, and you definitely may know that the novel is epistolary. So you do get to see that the draft of the novel did begin this way. Another interesting thing I would say about these manuscript drafts is, so you see in the second image, I hope it comes through clearly, but it is in, and this is the first, this is how the novel begins in the manuscript draft. And she's writing in green ink, and she wrote in green ink because Langston Hughes was her favorite poet, and Langston Hughes always signed his books in green ink. So she sort of was channeling another writer, author when she began this book. I chose the second page just because you could see some of the revisions that she was making as she was going along. So if you, people have come in for hours and hours to come and access these drafts. Other things that are related to the manuscript draft of The Color Purple is, as Joellen mentioned, Walker was really basing a lot of The Color Purple off of her family and her family experience. So she actually has what she calls character sketches for this novel. So for instance, Mr., I forget the direct inscription, but it says like, will remind me of my grandfather, very mean. So she sort of sketches out what she wants sort of these characters, their personalities to convey across the book. So there we have a lot of material related to just the writing of The Color Purple manuscript draft. Okay, so then moving on, I'm glad that, Joellen, that you discussed both the film and the musical production, because we have some really great ephemeral material in our collection around it. Some people might not know that Alice Walker actually submitted to Steven Spielberg a what she hoped would be the screenplay for The Color Purple. She was actually really involved in the process, but they ultimately did not go with her version of the film. And there was it's a really great, she sends, Alice Walker also, when she would send out mail, she would keep a copy of it for herself. So she sends Steven Spielberg the script that he eventually sends her to say, hey, this is what it's going to be. And she says, you know, I'm sorry it took me so long to write you back, but I'm having a really hard time letting this go. And so it was, you know, really showing that even though she wanted, I'm sure, The Color Purple to have another life and to have a derivative, she knew that she was sort of letting go of some of control over the story that she originally had. And then we know a lot of the hate mail and things that came from that afterwards. And then here's just for the musical, here's the playbill and a ticket for it. And then randomly in the collection, I'm not sure what it was produced for, but showing that it's a church fan of a performance by Shug Avery. So I need to do more digging into the collection to see actually where it's from. So those are the things that are really about, that are just a taste of the things that we have in the Walker Papers around The Color Purple. And then finally, I just wanted to let you all know about an exhibition. So we had a physical exhibition called She Gathers Me. And as Joellen mentioned in my bio, it is a exhibition that maps connections between Black women writers. And now the exhibition, prior to the pandemic, the exhibition was traveling throughout libraries in the state of Georgia. So I'm sure once, when it's safe to do so, it will travel again. And then in the next few months, there will be a digital exhibition that will be available. But Alice Walker is prominently featured in the exhibition. Joellen, I thought it was very interesting when you talked about Essence Magazine, because Alice Walker and other contemporary Black women writers had a really interesting relationship with publications like Essence Magazine, seeing that it was a magazine that was expressly for Black women, but not necessarily feeling like it represented all of that. And another thing that Joellen mentioned is also in the exhibition about Alice Walker sort of resurrecting the memory and the works of Zora Neale Hurston. Another Alice Walker thing that's in the exhibition is also discourse between she and Black woman poet Audre Lorde about the term feminism versus womanist, which is a term that Alice Walker coined herself. So outside of that, this is really it. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have. If you have any questions, you can definitely contact me at my email. And then that is my GM Dud4 is my handle across platforms. So I'll stop screen sharing so that if anyone has any questions, I can definitely answer or try to anyway.
I'm like freaking out right now. This is so exciting.
I just have a comment looking at, I love seeing her the actual manuscript. And it struck me, I don't know if you've flipped through the whole thing, but it seems that she made very few revisions. I mean, there are huge passages where there's not, I mean, it's just the text. And I'm thinking what kind of mind she must have to, you know, it must have been clear in her mind, and then putting it on paper maybe was, you know, I don't know. Do you have any comments about her working process as far as the manuscripts?
Yes, that I'm so glad that you noticed that. So it took so long for me to find a page that she actually was making revisions on. And I think it probably goes to a lot of what Joy Ellen was describing before. She is a writer that allows her characters to speak to her. She's very clear about the things that she wants to write. And I would say that is something that I noticed with Alice Walker, but with a lot of Black women writers across the board are very clear about the way that they want their voice to sort of be heard.
I think that's a great point. And, you know, I think you're right, Gabrielle, because I noticed even as I read the essay from In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, she said there were days and weeks and even months when nothing happened, nothing whatsoever. I worked on my quilt, took long walks with my lover, lay on an island we discovered, et cetera, et cetera. She said Celie and Shug and Albert were getting to know each other, coming to trust my determination to serve their entry. And that's one thing I write. I'm sometimes too scared to show anybody, but I write, but it's like, sometimes you have to be okay, I think, with the pace, like with just the silence or with it taking a long time. So that's a great observation, Tamara, and then great Gabrielle. She probably just waited for them to actually say something. And then when they did, she was able to write it down.
I had a question along those same lines. In her manuscripts and in her papers for The Color Purple, is she one of those kind of authors that works with a preliminary outline before she starts writing? Did you find anything like that in her papers? Because I know that some do, some don't.
Yeah, the only thing that I think that she does consistently is do character sketches. And I think that's something that's consistent throughout her writing, but I don't see her writing an outline throughout most of her novels.
That's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah.
My husband is a writer, and he never used to write outlines, and he never started writing outlines for his books until sometime after we got married, and I became his proofreader, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting how some people can and can't. That's cool.
Yeah. And Joellen, I think there's a question in the chat, or someone has put in the chat about whether Emory has a version of the screenplay because they would love to compare it. Yes, there is a version of the screenplay that Alice Walker wrote. And there is also a version of, or she got the screenplay from, that was ultimately used from Steven Spielberg as well. But outside of that particular, Alice Walker also envisioned a movie with vampires, like that and she has like a mini screenplay for that. So there are other really interesting things that she also like conceived in the collection as well. The vampire thing was a little scary. I was like, oh, Alice, where are you going with this?
I wanted to ask you something. The picture that you showed that she had taped on the front of her manuscript draft on the spiral notebooks is very intriguing to me, because that's something that women typically do or did back then. They would gather the sticks from the forest to be kindling for their fires. So I'm just really, really, really curious about that picture. If it's someone in her family, or why it spoke to her so fully to put it on the front of that spiral notebook.
You know,
Any
Maureen,
ideas?
that's a really great question. It's a really great question. And it's one I tell you, every time we show this book, people are always asking, why is this on the cover? And every time I see Alice Walker, I think I'm just so starstruck that I don't say like, hey, I have all these questions for you. But I should really find out. But and the picture doesn't occur anywhere else in like the photographs in her collection. And I can't tell whether it's like the way that it's pasted down, if it's an original that she has, like, there's so many questions about it, but it would be a really great, I think, research project for someone to do, especially like you're saying, other women do the same thing. Sort of what are they trying to invoke as they're writing? I think would be a really great research question. So once I find out, Maureen, I will get back with Joy Ellen and she can spread it out and let everybody know.
Thank you.
I just had one thing that I thought was interesting. I know that you mentioned that Alice Walker would keep copies of, when she would send out responses to correspondents. So was she, from the collection that you all have at Emory, can you tell, was she a pretty meticulous record keeper, or was she kind of all over the place with it? What was she like, or what is she like?
She was very meticulous. Like, it's so interesting. Some people, I think, writers, and especially, thinking about Black women writers or Black women or people of color just in general, often think their stories don't matter. But Alice Walker, it seemed, was very cognizant of the fact someone would want her archive one day, because she kept the mail that she sent out. But like for the notes that she would write to Audre Lorde, it said at the top, file A. Lorde, because she wanted to make sure that these things were like in place. And so, as many of you might know, archivists really try to keep this concept of original order, the way that that writers or creators have organized their things. And I think her collection is a really, really great example of like writers being very intentional about the things that they want people to sort of take from their collections.
Fascinating. I did not realize that. Oh my goodness.
Also in her collection, there is a lot of her personal stuff that's not related to The Color Purple, right? Does she, speaking of that picture on the front of the notebook, just for example, did she do any genealogy? Does she know a lot about her family history?
So I think that Alice Walker's sister might have been the person that did that. So she has a lot of, some of the scrapbooks that are in the collection are ones that her sister actually did while Alice was like out doing the things that she was doing. But I think others of her family members have done that. It is in the collection, but I don't know that we have evidence that that Alice Walker was doing that on her own.
It's a lot of work. I can't imagine being a professional writer and a genealogist at the same time.
Right.
Wow. Anybody else have questions for Gabrielle? This was just fascinating. I think you're going to have some patrons when you all open up again, because I mean, I've been, but I've never gotten a chance to, go in the Walker collection or the Walker papers. So, it just looks amazing and so rich. And thank you so much, Gabrielle, for curating that incredibly needed and just wonderful exhibit as well. So wonderful. I can't wait to really get to look at it more. And I saw that one of the women featured, was that Nikki Giovanni in there?
Yes.
Yeah. I know someone in this group really enjoys Nikki Giovanni's poetry. I had someone mention that to me. So anyway, you just like really did a lot of the heavy hitters, and we love it.
Yeah, and we also have some Nikki Giovanni things in our collections too. I can't remember his name. John Oliver Killings was her teacher at Fisk, and he has some of her writings in his collection, some of her early writings. So please come and see them. And also, thank you so much, Joellen, for this platform. I think that this is just so innovative and so creative, and it's just, you know, really nice to just have these types of conversations about our materials that don't necessarily have to be like this highbrow scholarly thing, but we're all able to come and bring our own experience into this conversation. So I just really thank you for this programming. It's so innovative. I hope everyone, like you tell everyone in the profession that you're doing it so that they can start to copy you as always.
Yay! I'm so glad. Yeah, it's so much fun, and we've got new people today, but we also got some of our folks that come every week. So it's just so much fun, and you know, we use the book as really like a platform to just, you know, to continue the conversation about you know, its development, you know, literature in general, cultural impact, book history. It's just wonderful. So thank you for joining us. I wanted to go ahead and do the raffle. And I just want to say, for all of you all who joined the raffle, it was just inspiring to me to hear about all of these women that, you know, that really made an impact on you all, that inspired you all. We had people from historical figures, we had writers, and you know what? We had a lot of moms. A lot of people are inspired by their moms. And I know that, you know, Alice Walker, who's very much an advocate of matrilineage, would really, I'm sure, appreciate that. Lots of moms and aunts who inspired us. So I thought that was just beautiful. I enjoyed reading all of those, and it gave me all the feels, and I loved it. Okay, so let me pick. I have and this person will win a free bag of coffee from Black Coffee Atlanta, which we are so happy is partnering with us. Okay, we've got number 7, and that is Jamila Rivers. Is Jamila Rivers on? Let's see, do I see you? You have to be here to get it, so let me see. Last call for Jamila Rivers. Okay, we'll try again. Okay, we got number 3, and that is, oh, Ellen Freeman. That's my mama. Congratulations, Mom. I promise you all that was not like planned at all, not fixed, but that's so funny. Well, my mama inspires me, so maybe it was meant to be then. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. Does anyone have any final comments? And also I put the in the chat. I can, let me see if I can put it again. And yes, actually, Gabrielle, and I really need to thank Gabrielle again, because she's the one who told me about Black Coffee Atlanta. So this is all because of Gabrielle, basically. So thank you. I put the link again to, oh, thank you, Tamika. Mom and I look like sisters. I put the link to In Search of the Color Purple. And I did the link from Bookshop, because that's a website where you can support independent bookstores. Anyway, so feel free, if you're interested, to take a look at that. And yes, Star, we do these meetings every week. We have a different topic. So if you all are interested in being on our listserv, please just send me an email, or send an email to rarebooks@kennesaw.edu and let me know that you would like to join the listserv, and you'll get the links every week, and you'll get the topic. You don't, of course, have to join every week if you can't make it, but at least you'll know the topic and you'll get the link. But anyway, thank you all so much, and I'm just so grateful for this time we had today. And yes, these meetings are recorded. They're uploaded to our department's YouTube page, and I send those out so people can see them if they you know, miss the meeting or anything. Yes, I will include the email to rarebooks@Kennesaw. Okay. righty. Well, again, Gabrielle, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and hopefully we will see you next week.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Joanna.
Thank you. Later.
Thank you.
Thank you.